Hey everybody, this is Jerry Scarlata, and this is episode number 9 of Thrive TV. And today, we are going to go over the goblet squat. I'm sorry. Let me try that again. Today, we're going to go over the squat. Goblet squat will be part of our talk. However, squat is the movement that we're going over. Hey everybody, this is Jerry Scarlata, and this is episode number 9 of Thrive TV. And today, we are going to continue our talks about basic human movements. And we are going to go over the squat pattern. So, just to review a little bit, we've talked about the loaded carry, we've talked about the hinge, and we've gone over a little bit of the everything else category in rolling and crawling. So, today with the squat, there are a bunch of ways to do squats, and we'll go over that in a little bit. However, let's first go over the squat pattern in general. So with the hinge pattern that we talked about last week, which is a hard pattern for people to get, sorry, cars are driving by, squirrel. The hinge pattern is a hard pattern for people to get. They always want to squat with the hinge pattern. So with the hinge pattern, there is maximal hip flexion with minimal knee flexion, okay? Hinge pattern, maximal hip flexion, minimal knee flexion. With the squat, which is an easier one for people to get for the most part, depending on how you load it, with the squat, there is maximal hip flexion and maximal knee flexion. So, with the hinge, we have hip flexion, minimal knee flexion. With the squat, we have hip flexion and maximal knee flexion. So, we're actually down. Man, I'm big time distracted today. We have dogs walking by the door and everything. I just need to get that thing covered up. Anyway, so with the squat, we are actually down in a position where our upper thigh is parallel to the floor, okay? So there is a point of diminishing returns where we go too low. People call these ass to grass squats, and sometimes that squatting this low can be problematic for a lot of people, especially because of the structure of the knee. When you go beyond the parallel point in the structure of the knee, how it moves can cause issues with people if you're not loaded correctly and really not paying attention to your form. So we like to say thigh parallel to the floor. So with your foot placement, we want to make sure that your feet are hip width apart, just like with our hinge that we talked about last week. Your feet are hip width apart. Your toes don't have to be totally forward. A lot of people talk about toes forward, but because of how our bodies are structured, every one of us is different. What you want to do is get yourself into a position, get your feet set, and wherever your feet lay, if they're pointed a little further out, that's okay. If they're pointed a little more forward, that's okay too. So they have to be set to wherever you are comfortable. We have clients that have their feet pointed out a little more than others because of how their hips are structured. If we try and force them to have their toes more forward, and they go and they start to squat, their toes will just slowly pull themselves out. So don't think that you have to fit this toes more forward stance that some people push. Your feet need to be wherever you like them to be. They should be in about a hip width position. When you start to get too wide, okay, or too narrow, then you come into other problems. Power lifters lift out here because the range of motion is less. However, a lot of hip impingement issues can come about. So we like hip width, toes slightly pointed out, or wherever you're comfortable, all right? So maximal hip flexion, maximal knee flexion, thighs parallel to the floor, all right? We want to make sure that our shoulders are always up no matter what kind of squat we're doing, all right? So as we drive up, we want to make sure that we're not coming down like this. We also want to make sure that our knees are not collapsing into valgus, which means that as we come down and as we come up, if our knees buckle like this is valgus, your knees coming together. as you're coming up or in any particular way. So we want to make sure that our knees stay out over our toes. All right, stay out over our toes as we come up. If your knees wobble a lot when you're squatting or deadlifting, but this is mostly when you're squatting, because we don't have a lot of flexion in our knees whenever we deadlift, you won't see it a lot. So when you squat, if you have a lot of movement in your knees, pay attention to them, because that's when knee problems can come in. If you have a lot of movement, that means your butt is weak. Your hip adductors and your hip abductors, AD and AB ductors, are weak if your knees are moving a lot. So you have to work on them, and that's for another talk down the road. Point being, if your knees move, hip adductors and abductors are weak, especially your glutes, so work on them. So we want to make sure our knees stay over our toes. We want to make sure our shoulders are up at all times. That brings us to, how do we load the squat? Especially assuming that we're a beginner or someone who hasn't had successful squats in the past. Being that squats are something that we should do, that everyone should do, how do we load it so that we are successful? So there are a bunch of ways that you can do squats, bunches of ways. You can use a barbell. Everyone knows the back squat, front squat, overhead squat, Zercher squat, which is when the bar's in the crooks of your arm, your elbows. You can do goblet squats, double kettlebell squats, dumbbell squats, offset squats. So bunches of ways to do them. The best way that we've learned, that we've figured out to teach people how to squat is the goblet squat. So when you go back to loading and where the weight is relative to your body, whenever you load the squat pattern anteriorly, meaning the front of your body, if you load it anteriorly versus on the back, your body is forced to stay upright. So let me go over the goblet position in general. Anytime you hold a weight, or you call something a goblet hold, you're holding it like this, okay? Imagine a goblet cup and you're holding the cup. This is how you would hold a goblet cup. So this is called the goblet squat because it's similar looking to the way that you would hold the goblet cup. So if you're holding the weight in goblet position, all right, and you're going to squat, your body is forced to stay upright because of the distribution of the weight. Okay, so you're forced to stay upright because of the distribution of the weight. Whenever the weight is distributed on your back, as in back squats, you have a harder time staying upright if you haven't nailed the pattern in general, if your form is not nailed, and if the weight is too much for you. You have trouble staying here because your back wants to go like this as you come up, and your knees want to wobble more and push, go into valgus as you come up. So that's why the best way that we found to teach the squat and just to load it in general, we use it with everybody, is the goblet squat. Whenever your weights get too light, you can do double kettlebell squats. So let's go over those two. We've already talked a little bit about the goblet squat, but we're going to go over it again. So goblet position, feet are set, okay? This is where my feet like to be. They're hip width apart. They're slightly pointed out. Goblet position, butt back, okay? To teach, we like to teach elbows inside of knees, okay? Skin on skin contact, elbows inside the knees. The skin on skin contact seems to have a great effect on understanding the movement. As soon as you get in here and you get the skin on skin contact, all of a sudden you get, all right, this is how I'm supposed to feel, this is how I'm supposed to move. So hold your weight goblet style, get your feet set, butt back, straight down, skin on skin contact. Make sure when you drive up, your shoulders are up towards the sky, okay? Drive up, and you're up towards the sky. As you come through at the top, make sure you bring your hips all the way through, at the top. Don't rock forward, but bring your hips all the way through, keeping the rib cage down and intact. So with that, the other way that you can anteriorly load the squat pattern with kettlebells, at least, is with the double kettlebell squat. So instead of one kettlebell, we have 2 kettlebells. 2, not 4, 2. Okay, and we get them into the rack position, get your feet set, and we can go through the same exact movement. We can get our knees inside of our, try it again, elbows inside of our knees. Okay, keep your shoulders up high. Make sure our shoulders are staying up. Oh, as you can tell, with the lifting, moving weights, my mouth's getting dry, a little cotton mouth. Give me about 5 seconds to get myself together. So as you can tell, instead of holding one weight, goblet style, you're having 2 weights, but you can still go through the same motion. You can still get your elbows inside of your knees so that you can really nail that pattern. So if you're not comfortable with your squat pattern and you're not comfortable with squatting in general, these 2 moves, especially the goblet squat, are great ways to start. So stick them in there and really go through them. If you're new to it in the beginning, don't worry about doing high reps. Don't worry about 8s and 10s and 12s. Don't worry about that stuff. Do slow sets of 5. Do slow sets of 5. Get down there, get your elbows inside your knees, really feel the move, and then drive up. Do slow sets of 5 until you feel comfortable enough doing sets of 8. Okay? It's whenever you get into either higher reps or higher weight, right off the bat, that people can get into issues. So make sure you're nailing the movement. A couple of ways that you can place these, okay? Obviously, so we like to use them in strength building, but we also, again, for the people who are, I guess, more veterans, we like to use it as cardio as well. But we want to make sure that you nail the move before you're getting into the cardio of goblet squat or squatting in general. So at the beginning of your workout, doing slow sets of 5 in the beginning so that you can really grease the groove and get the pattern going, and then slowly work your way into sets of 8 or so. If your goal is overall fitness, maybe gaining a little muscle, leaning out, that 8 to 12 rep range is a good number once you have the movement understood, as long as you're not maxing out sets of 8 to 12. If your goal's strength, then we want to stick in the 3 to 6 rep range. Okay, if that's your goal. Do these in the beginning of your workout. They should be somewhat high intensity on your nervous system. So anytime something more high intensity on your nervous system, you want to do it in the beginning. You can group it with other exercises, but don't group it with deadlifts, because deadlifts are another high intensity, high nervous system type of exercise. If you're putting them at the end of your workout for cardio, again, you're not doing max weight whenever you're doing them for cardio. If you're doing goblet squats and you're sticking them at the end for cardio, then you want to use a 60%, 50% weight. It's not about maxing out, it's just about getting your heart rate up. So if your regular goblet squat for a set of 8 is 44 pounds, then grab a 26-pound kettlebell for your cardio. You can do it the same way we talked about last week, doing swings and push-ups. Same thing. If you're doing goblet squats, do 8 to 10 goblet squats with a light 26-pound kettlebell or so, depending on your weight. Light kettlebell, and drop down and do 8 to 10 push-ups. Repeat that 4 times, and that's a really good cardio workout. We like to teach you about these other cardio ideas and putting these exercises into cardio types of layouts, because walking on a treadmill is boring, man. Getting on elliptical for 45 minutes is boring. So figure out ways to make your cardio more useful. I mean, doing goblet squats and swings and mixing them with push-ups and chin-ups and rows and things like that, like, it's not only are you getting cardio in, cardio doesn't have to be walking on a treadmill and doesn't have to be getting on the elliptical. Like, that's just what we label cardio. That's not, I mean, cardio just means like your heart pounding. And if your heart's pounding heavier because you're lifting heavier weights, or lifting weights faster or whatever you're doing, then you're getting cardio in. So anyway, before I rant about that too much. That's why we would like to teach you guys about different aspects of cardio and how you can kind of plug those things in. That way you can get your cardio in 10 minutes or less, or 5 minutes or less if you choose to. If you watch the Tabata episode number 1, click episode number 1, interval training, Tabata, 10 seconds of work, 20 seconds of rest, you're done in 4 minutes. 4 minutes. And that will give you the equivalent work of 1 hour of steady state resistance training. So 4 minutes or 1 hour, you decide. If you enjoy running, that's fine too. So that's, again, another talk. Before I start babbling too much, thank you guys for listening and for hanging with me through distractions and my mind shutting off here and there. So that's the squat. We'll go over the push and pull later down the road. Let's see, Travis will be here later on in the week. I'm not 100% sure we're going over yet, but she'll be here later on in the week, so you'll get your nutrition episode in for the week. If you guys have any suggestions on what you'd like to see, you can check us out on Twitter at TheThrivePack. Also on Facebook, Thrive Fitness. Otherwise, thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you next time.